So, what was your first experience with domestic violence? Was it something that you saw as a child, or was it something that you saw once you were older?
My first experience with domestic violence was in California. I was born in California on a military base. My dad was a Marine. My mom was a homemaker. And I can vividly remember seeing the military police coming in to take my dad out of the house because him and my mom had been fighting really bad. I just remember yelling. I remember my mom crying. My sister is 2 years younger than me. I remember her crying and me trying to calm her down. I may have been 4 or 5.
Being involved in abuse is something that I went through throughout my entire life. It was something that I witnessed my mother going through at such a young age. I witnessed my aunties. I witnessed my sisters. I've lost sisters for violence. I've lost a lot, because of sexual abuse, domestic violence, physical abuse. That's kind of like plagued my whole life.
As a child, in my mind, I thought this wasn't right, what I saw my mom go through. And I thought that I would never experience that. I don't know. I mean, looking back, I didn't realize it was wrong. I thought it was just, the process. And then, of course, process of relationships. And of course, you see, like I said before, you see films and movies and women leaving situations. But when you have an emotional attachment to somebody, or you are infatuated, or even if you love them or in love, you're not in love with the abusive behavior, but you're in love with a person who's abusive.
It ended up getting to a point where I kind of got into situations of my own where men and everything were really abusive. Started off as physical abuse, started as mental abuse, ended up going into sexual abuse. My son ended up being abused in just relationships that I was in. Not nothing with, my son's father, nothing with my daughter's father, nothing with my husband, just relationships, before that.
The first time he did it, he said he was sorry. The second time, he said he was sorry. He didn't mean to do it. My husband was my first boyfriend. That's the first man in my life. My relationship, I didn't know what any other relationship was like. And when I was 15, I was pregnant with my first child by him. And where I come from, you don't walk around being pregnant and like it was proud. And then I had dreams too. But I was ashamed, and I felt that if I got married, it would take care of everything.
And trying to rationalize it in your mind because you're fighting against like the truth and your emotions. Like the truth is this person is eventually going to harm you psychologically, emotionally, and in your mind it's not right, but your emotions are saying like, I'm attached, I have feelings, I know this isn't right, maybe if I just do something different this person will change. But majority of the time they don't.
My first experience with domestic violence was high school. I was a teen mom. I had my baby my senior year of high school. I was on a cheer team, he was on a football team. He was very emotionally abusive and physically abusive. We had fights over everything. Diapers, who was supposed to watch my daughter. When I had to go to work, he didn't want to keep her. He would interrupt my job. He even tore up my car. One day I let him use my car to take me to school. I had to go to Wayne State. And we were kind of breaking up because he was so abusive. I just didn't want to be in that relationship with him. And then he had cheated on me. He had other kids. And I remember him picking me up from Wayne State. And I got in the passenger seat and I was like, I want my car. I wanted my car back. And he was like, oh, well, I'm going to drop you any money off and I'll give it to you later. And so my phone rang. And it was a guy that I met, at school. And when I finished having my conversation, he punched me in my face while he was driving. And we were entering on the ramp for the freeway. And I fought back. So we were literally fighting while we were driving on the freeway. And he took my phone and threw it out the window. He pulled over and we were fighting outside the car. Another truck driver pulled over and he was like, look, you don't need to be fighting her. Both of y'all could die. You got a baby in the car. And I thought that fighting your boyfriend was normal. I didn't think that it was quote unquote domestic violence.
My first encounter, you know, through childhood, and then definitely when I started dating, there were instances that I experienced and I never walked away, and then I got married to an abusive man. And initially, like, there is not a sign that says, oh, I'm abusive, but there are signs when someone quickly wants to commit to you, or they want to start helping you financially, or they question what you wear or who you're with, or the constant calls. You know, there's different, you know, signals that women need to know about, because you're thinking like, oh, this person is just a great provider, and you know, but there are red flags, and sometimes it's just intuitiveness. Like, sometimes you just know.
I was in a domestic violence situation for about 4 years. I wouldn't say I stayed for outsourcing influences. I pretty much stayed based upon not feeling like I could survive financially without him. I had 2 children, and we were in another state, somewhere I wasn't, you know, familiar with, and I needed him in order to survive. But I kind of got tired of being tired, and I just decided to kind of take the leap of faith and leave and trust God that I would get home, and I did.
Abuser was my husband. He was in law enforcement, and he was also a minister of the church, so am I, licensed minister. And we had a very tumultuous relationship in the end. Now, in the beginning, it didn't last long, but it was volatile enough that I almost lost my life. And so I had to go stay in a shelter. And I stayed in that shelter for 4 months until they could find him. And while I was there, he also, back in the day, back when that happened to me, there was no Facebook and there was no Instagram, and there was the chat lines. And he had went into the chat room and impersonated me and prostituted me in the country. And so at our home, he had been evicted from our home because I had a personal protection order. I started getting all these invitations, and I'm thinking, being in the church, wow, it's a lot of people getting married. Eventually, I opened one of those up because in the shelter, I also worked, so I would try to drive by my house and get my mail. I never told my neighbors what I was going through. I didn't have anybody pick my mail up, so I would, when I thought it was safe, drive by to get my mail. And I would see all these invitations, what I thought were invitations. What I found out, they were solicitations for sex, because he had impersonated me as a prostitute on the internet. I finally opened one up and found that there was a man traveling from Minnesota by plane to meet me. And it frightened me so much because he knew everything about me, knew everything about my daughter, and I didn't know who it was. I got the authorities involved, and it became a federal offense because he crossed state lines. We went to trial, and he finally went to jail. And so out of that, being the time that I did have to stay in the shelter, I was a regular church goer because I really believed in God, and I knew God had my life and my destiny.
So around my youngest daughter's 2nd birthday, my oldest daughter's around 8 or 9, I started a business. Because at this time, breaking up from my youngest daughter's father, I started to gain some sense of my own worth. I was making pretty good money. I was in school part-time, and I had a house, I had a car, I had all of the things that I needed. I was a lot more stable. Mm-hmm. And so to make extra money, I started a nightlife promotion company. And I started networking with people to promote my events. And I came across a Facebook post from Kaylin Risker. Mm-hmm. And I became her Facebook friend. And Kaylin runs the organization SAFE, which is an acronym for Sisters Acquiring Financial Empowerment. And so I went to this conference, and I'm sitting at this table with like 5 other women, and I'm very silly. I'm cracking jokes. We having a great time. And I was blown away looking around the room like, where the black eyes? Where the busted lips? I just knew going to this domestic violence women's conference, people was going to be toe up, beat up. And I'm sugar sharp, I'm like, I'm not like them. Yeah, I had an experience, but it wasn't really domestic violence. But hey, I'll go. So I go to the conference, and I'm talking to the ladies at my table, and they start sharing their stories, except for one girl. She just was kind of standoffish, but she was joining in the conversation, but she didn't tell why she was there. And so people started recognizing me across the room because of my nightlife and event promotion company. So they started calling me into the hallway like, oh my God, you a survivor? And I'm like, no, I'm not a survivor. And they're like, well, why are you here? And I'm like, oh, I want the network. Oh, can you pray for me? And they started sharing their stories with me. And I'm like, oh my God. And then another woman that I actually promoted events with was there. And she pulled me in the hallway crying like, I'm so happy to see you here. She was like, I knew we had a bond. And she was telling me her story. And I'm like, that's not me. Like, I still had a disconnect between the other survivors and myself. But I prayed for each of them. So I missed like half of the conference because everybody one at a time was pulling me to the side, having me pray for them in the hallway.
And I would come back from church, and a lot of the women would come down to my door because we were all in like a dorm, like domestic violence shelter, and say, would you pray for me? And I'm like, wow, because you weren't allowed to really pray on the grounds or have any type of services because of the federal funding. So I said, okay. And we would pray at night, sneak and pray at night. And I'm like, wow, there's nothing for faith-based women who are facing these type of challenges. It's not talked about in the church. It's the best kept secret. It's like the holy hush of the family. And it created a crisis of faith for women who have been saved, who have been dealing with these dilemma and put upon that, if she was saved, if she prayed more, if she was more obedient, that even if she was killed, her crown and glory would have all the jewels in it. But that's not the interpretation of what Till Death Do Us Part is about. You're not to be murdered. Jesus already died for you on the cross. So
that's why I'm here. That's the only reason I can sit here and stand before anyone today. I am very thankful for the opportunity that I've had, but in my job, I've always reached out to other women and provided resources, my own personal resources, that I could help any young girl, any woman. But I've never told them, you gotta leave. I let them make that decision on their own.
Then was born the Sisters Against Abuse Society. We have been in operation as a nonprofit for 17 years, and it has grown really wonderful around the country. I had an opportunity to teach in Germany a couple of weeks ago. I've taught in 10 different states. We do clergy training and service provider training and all types of documentaries that we've done. I work with the Institute on Domestic Violence in the African American Community out of the University of Minnesota. That has now transitioned into the African American Domestic Peace Project out of Mississippi. So I fly around the country and we train bishops, we train clergy, we train law enforcement, we train social workers, we train military. We do a lot of training to prevent lives, to save lives in the Black community. Black women experience domestic violence at a rate that's 35% higher than white women and 2.5% higher than other races. And lethality for them is 75%. After she's left, she's more apt to be killed. She's more likely, 2 times likely, to be arrested by police for reactionary violence than white women. And so in our community, we don't have these statistics, but we're very marginalized. And if I can save one life, I've done my job, the calling that Christ has given me.
I would say, if I could give any advice to any woman, I guess I would say, you could be different. You could step out, you could change your life, you could be different. Working at this law firm right now, I run this law firm. as far as like, you know, Fortune 500 clients, companies and stuff that I run, doing all their immigration work. I would never had a chance to do that if it wasn't for, you know, coming forward to Lakewood, you know, coming forward to Catholic Social Services and ACS. That was who introduced me to the paralegal school. ACS did, put me through school, got me everything I needed to get, and put me at, you know, my law firms and stuff like that. And my husband already having different connects, you know, and his own self, you know, helped me get into even better places and get all the training and stuff I needed. And right now I'm chairperson of the State Bar of Michigan. I just finished running an event down at Cobo. I still got a couple of events even coming up now. It's been a hard life, but it's like the main thing that I always was embarrassed about is the drugs, is the abuse, is everything I went through. That my life wasn't like people that I was in contact with or people that I worked with. But the same life that I was embarrassed about ended up being my greatest testimony. It ended up being the one thing that kind of, you know, blended me in with people so that they can know, like, yeah, this is what she's doing now, but, you know, that's what I went through before.
I would definitely tell them to figure out why they don't love themselves and think about the issues that they have that they feel has landed them in that position, whether it's not having their father or not having their mother or being in abusive situations as a child. Maybe they have self-esteem issues. I would definitely start with their heart and figuring out what's going on with that aspect and have them to write things down just to figure out why they're actually there. And once they figure that out, I would definitely let them know that it's okay, they're not alone, that there's tons of women and men that go through this, and that if they want help and they're actually willing to put forth the effort to leave and never go back, that I'm always there to help.
It's not an excitement to it. It's not a, you know, it's killing people. Women are being affected by it. Children are being affected by it. Families are, you know, losing sisters and mothers and cousins and, you know, so, yeah. So that's where I'm at. I'm happy that I'm out of it. And I'll have to do what by all means necessary, stay away from any type of toxic relationship. Even sometimes your female friends can be very abusive. Right. And you have to be careful of that too, you know, because once somebody shows you who they are, believe them. The one moment that you like, what's up with that? Right. You know, and then they do it again. No, not me. So I would just say, you know, it's a process and there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame behind it, embarrassment, but, you know, I just look at it as this is my, you know, this is a part of the path that's being paid for me, and maybe I needed to go through it to help somebody else get, you know, through it as well, you know.